You are running late for a crucial meeting in the Roman Forum, but the public sundial is wrong. In a world without a single gear or battery, Roman engineers created solar clocks accurate to within minutes. By the end of this video, you will understand the hidden genius behind their ancient timekeeping and see these stone monuments in a completely new light. How did they carve such precise curves into solid marble without modern tools? And why would a sundial made for Rome fail completely in Egypt? What does it take to truly capture a moment in time? The sundial casting your shadow was a masterwork of geometry, not just a carved stone. At its heart stood the gnomon, the angled rod that reached for the sky. This was not a simple stick. Its precise angle was the device's first secret, calculated to match the latitude of the city where it stood. This carefully angled metal or bronze blade cast the all-important shadow. That shadow fell upon a curved dial face, a hollowed-out hemisphere of marble or bronze, inscribed with a spiderweb of lines. These lines were not just for the hours of the day. They formed a complex map of the sun's yearly journey, with different curves marking the changing paths of the shadow across the seasons. You could read the time of day, but also the approximate time of year, all from the position of a single dark line. This was the public clock of its era, a permanent fixture in the bustling forum or a sacred space within a temple. Its quiet, moving shadow governed commerce, legal proceedings, and daily life, a silent guardian of Roman order. That intricate map of lines carved into the marble was a secret code, and it only worked for one place on Earth. The very first line of this code was the angle of the gnomon itself. This rod was not placed upright by chance. It was tilted to point directly at the North Star, an angle that perfectly matched the latitude of its city. In Rome, that angle was about 42 degrees. An engineer in Alexandria, however, would set his gnomon at a much shallower 31 degrees. This precise alignment was the foundation of everything that followed. You could not simply pack up a beautiful sundial from the Roman Forum and ship it to a new colony in Egypt, expecting it to tell the correct time. If you tried, the entire system would fail. The carefully calculated hour lines on the dial face would no longer match the sun's actual path across the sky. The shadow might indicate the 5th hour when it was truly the 6th, or show noon, a full hour before the sun reached its highest point. The clock would lie, creating chaos in the markets and courts of a distant province. This is why the knowledge of how to build these devices had to travel with the legions and the administrators, not just the devices themselves. For the empire to run on a single solar time, every major city needed its own locally calibrated sundial, a permanent stone clock built for that specific slice of the world. But how did a Roman geometer actually carve those elegant, curving lines into stone? The answer lies in the sun's own motion, a path that is never the same from one day to the next. Those lines you see on the dial are hyperbolas, a special type of curve that opens up like the wings of a bird in flight. They are not straight, and they are not spaced evenly apart like the ticks on a modern clock. Each curve represents the sun's shadow at a specific hour, but that hour's path changes dramatically with the seasons. In the high, long days of summer, the sun's arc across the sky is vast, casting a shadow that sweeps along one particular hyperbola. In the short, low days of winter, that same hour of the day is marked by a completely different curve, one that is much tighter and closer to the base of the gnomon. The space between these seasonal curves tells you the time of year. A wide gap means you are near a solstice, while the lines almost merging together indicate you are close to an equinox. So the entire dial face becomes a permanent record of the sun's yearly dance, all captured in carved stone. To create this, the Roman engineer had to project the three-dimensional dome of the sky onto a two-dimensional, curved surface. They used the principles of conic sections, slicing an imaginary cone with an imaginary plane to generate the perfect hyperbolas needed. This was pure solar geometry translated into a practical, public tool. The mathematician would calculate the angles, and the stone carver would follow these precise templates, likely etched onto a sheet of bronze or drawn on parchment, to painstakingly inscribe the complex web onto the hard marble. Every chip of the chisel had to be perfect, for a single error in a curve would throw off the time for everyone who relied on its silent, moving shadow. This was not mere decoration, it was advanced mathematics made solid, a permanent clock driven by the sun itself. Even with a perfectly carved sundial, A problem remained that could make the sun itself seem untrustworthy. If you tracked the sun's shadow every single day, you would notice something strange. The moment the sun reaches its highest point, what we call noon, does not always happen at the same clock time. Some days your sundial would show noon a few minutes early, other days it would be a few minutes late. This difference between the time told by the sun, known as true solar time, and the perfectly even time we keep on a clock, known as mean solar time, is called the equation of time. This variance has two main causes. First, the Earth's orbit around the sun is not a perfect circle, but an ellipse, meaning our planet speeds up slightly when it is closer to the sun and slows down when it is farther away. Second, the tilt of the Earth's axis also affects the sun's apparent speed across the sky. Together, these two astronomical facts create a discrepancy that builds up and then cancels out over the course of a year. The result is a fascinating figure 8 pattern called an annulma, which you would see if you photographed the sun from the same spot at the same clock time every day for a year. The Romans, with their precise celestial observations, were aware of this drift. Their most advanced sundials did not just account for the seasons with their hyperbolas. Some incorporated corrections for this equation of time, perhaps to a movable component that could be adjusted daily or a secondary set of markings on the dial. This allowed a Roman official to rid a more standardized time from the sun's shadow, a time that would align more consistently with the hours used for legal and civic functions. This was the pinnacle of ancient timekeeping, a mechanical solution to an astronomical puzzle, ensuring that even the sun's slight irregularities were brought into the service of Roman order. That sharp angled rod was the heart of the entire mechanism, a masterwork of precision in its own right. The gnomon's most critical feature was its exact tilt, an angle that had to be flawlessly set during installation. This was not a rough estimation. Using specialized tools like the dioptra, a sophisticated surveying instrument, Roman engineers would carefully align the gnomon to point directly at the celestial pole, an invisible anchor in the northern sky. The height of the gnomon was equally calculated. It determined the scale of the entire dial face. A taller gnomon cast a longer, more sweeping shadow, allowing for a larger dial with more finely spaced hour lines, which in turn permitted a more precise reading of the time. But the most delicate part was the very tip. This point had to be sharp, often fashioned from a thin, hardened bronze blade. A blunt or rounded tip would cast a fuzzy, indistinct shadow, making it impossible to tell exactly where the shadow's edge fell among the intricate web of lines. The line between 9 in the morning and 9:30 is a matter of a shadow's width, and only a razor-sharp point could define that edge with the necessary clarity. The materials and craftsmanship were paramount. The gnomon had to withstand centuries of weather without warping, rusting, or breaking. A bronze casting was ideal, mounted securely into the heavy stone base to prevent any shift from frost, earthquakes, or simple wear. Any error in the gnomon's construction, whether in its angle, its height, or the sharpness of its point, would be magnified across the dial face. A mistake of just 1 degree in its alignment could result in a time error of several minutes, and that error would change throughout the day and across the seasons. A poorly made gnomon did not just tell the wrong time, it corrupted the entire celestial map carved into the stone, turning a masterpiece of solar geometry into a permanent public lie. The final and most critical stage was the calibration of this stone clock. After the painstaking carving and the careful forging of the gnomon, the entire structure had to be perfectly positioned in the public square. The first step was to ensure the dial's surface was absolutely level. Builders would have used simple but effective tools like water levels or a libella, a precursor to the spirit level, to achieve this flat, stable foundation. If the dial was tilted, the shadow would slide at an incorrect angle, distorting the time from the very first moment of the day, but leveling was the easy part. The true challenge was alignment. The central axis of the sundial had to point precisely along the north-south meridian line. A single degree of error here would cascade into a time discrepancy that grew throughout the day. A sundial misaligned by just 1 degree could be wrong by over 4 minutes by midday, and that error would be different again by sunset. So how did they find true north without a magnetic compass? One reliable method was to observe the sun itself. An engineer would mark the tip of the gnomon's shadow at different points throughout a day, tracing a shallow arc on the ground. The shortest shadow cast the moment the sun was at its absolute peak was local noon. A line drawn from the base of the gnomon through this point of the shortest shadow gave them a perfect north-south line. For even greater precision, especially on overcast days, they could turn to the night sky by sighting on the unmoving North Star, or by observing the rising and setting points of other bright stars. They could triangulate that crucial meridian. Once this line was physically marked on the site, the massive stone dial could be painstakingly rotated into its final, perfect orientation, its fate now locked to the motion of the heavens. This was not a one-time setup. Over years, the heavy stone base could settle or shift. A single earthquake, a flood, or even the constant rumble of carts could throw this delicate alignment off, turning a masterpiece of public timekeeping into a monument to inaccuracy. The silent guardian of Roman order relied entirely on this invisible, perfect line drawn from stone to star. That invisible line from north to south, arcing directly over the city, was the solar meridian. This was the celestial longitude against which every sundial was measured, and its mastery was the ultimate key to accuracy. For the Roman engineer, the most critical moment of the entire day was when the sun crossed this perfect arc in the sky. This instant was true local noon, the moment the sun reached its absolute highest point. At this precise second, the shadow cast by the gnomon would be at its shortest length and would point directly along the north-south line on the ground. Everything else on the dial, every curving hour line for every season, was calibrated from this foundational reference. The entire complex map of time was anchored to this single daily event. How did they find this fleeting moment with such precision? They would watch the gnomon's shadow throughout the late morning, marking its tip as it slowly crept across the prepared ground or a temporary measuring surface. At first, the shadow would grow shorter with each passing moment. Then it would reach a minimum point, appearing to pause for a brief time before beginning to lengthen again as the afternoon began. The exact center of that pause, the pivot point between shortening and lengthening, was true noon. This was not a matter of glancing up at the sun. It was a careful, patient observation of the shadow's behavior, a study in minimal change. The accuracy of this determination was paramount. If an engineer misjudged the moment of noon by even a single minute, the entire calibration of the hour lines would be skewed. A sundial built on that era would consistently tell time slightly wrong, its mistake baked permanently into the stone. The entire civic and commercial life of a Roman town could be running a few minutes fast or slow for generations, all because of one misjudged shadow on a single, crucial day of construction. This is why the process was so meticulous, a ritual of alignment that connected the motion of a shadow on Earth to the grand clockwork of the cosmos itself. This silent guardian of Roman order was built to last for centuries, carved from the very bones of the earth. The choice of marble for the dial face was no accident. Its immense stability was crucial. A massive block of stone resisted warping and shifting, providing a permanent, unchanging canvas for the delicate web of our lines. But marble is porous. Over decades, rain, frost, and scorching sun could slowly erode its surface, blurring the finely carved curves. A blurred line meant an ambiguous shadow, and an ambiguous shadow meant lost time. For the gnomon, the material of choice was often bronze. This alloy was strong, resistant to the elements, and could be cast into that perfectly sharp, slender point so essential for a crisp shadow. Yet bronze introduced its own subtle challenge. Metal expands when heated. On a sweltering summer afternoon, the bronze gnomon would grow minutely longer. This thermal expansion was tiny, perhaps less than the width of a grape seed over the entire length of the rod, but it was enough. A longer gnomon meant a slightly altered shadow angle, pushing the tip of the shadow a fraction beyond its intended mark on the marble dial. Over the course of a hot day, this could introduce an error of several minutes, making the sundial slowly drift ahead of the true solar time. The very materials that gave the clock its permanence also held the seeds of its daily inaccuracy. So how did the master craftsmen overcome the nature of their own materials? They designed with these properties in mind. The gnomon was not a single solid bar of bronze, but was often engineered as a blade or a triangulated structure, a shape more resistant to the bending forces of expansion. Its attachment points to the stone base were carefully designed to allow for minute movement without losing overall alignment. Some evidence suggests that the most precise dials might have had their hyperbola lines spaced with a built-in compensation, a secret tolerance for the metal's daily growth spurt. The stone itself was often selected from the finest, most densely grained marble, and the carved lines were cut deep to protect them from the wearing effects of weather and time. The entire device was a negotiation between the ideal geometry of the heavens and the physical reality of stone and metal, a masterpiece of engineering that acknowledged and tamed the whims of its own construction. While the grand marble sundials stood as permanent fixtures of civic life, timekeeping was also a personal matter for the Roman on the move. This was the realm of the portable sundial, a personal timepiece that folded shut like a small book. Known as a diptych, this ingenious device was often crafted from delicate ivory or durable bronze, its two hinged leaves protecting the delicate inscribed lines within. Opening it revealed a miniature cosmos, a tiny gnomon, often just a string that could be lifted into place, but making a clock portable introduced a cascade of new challenges. A public sundial was built for one specific latitude, its soul locked to a single city. A traveler's sundial, however, had to work in Rome 1 week and in Gaul the next. To solve this, many diptychs featured adjustable gnomons or multiple sets of hour lines etched onto the inner surfaces. The user would align the string to the correct angle for their current latitude, a setting often guided by a rough map of the empire inscribed on the device itself. Yet this portability came at a cost. The tiny dial face and short gnomon meant the shadow moved with far less definition. Where a public sundial could distinguish between moments, its pocket-sized cousin might only be accurate to within a quarter of an hour. It was a compromise between convenience and precision, a personal sun clock that traded the absolute authority of the Forum's monument for the freedom to mark the hours from anywhere under the open sky. Yet even the most advanced flat sundial was a projection, a flattened map of a curved sky. The ultimate expression of Roman solar geometry was the hemispherium, a bowl-shaped sundial carved from a single block of stone. Imagine holding a perfect, hollowed-out hemisphere in your hands, its curved interior a mirror of the celestial dome above. At the center of this stone bowl, a sharp gnomon pointed directly at the North Star. As the sun journeyed across the sky, its shadow would travel along the concave surface, tracing paths that were not just lines but perfect arcs. This design was a stroke of pure genius. Because the bowl's curve naturally matched the apparent curve of the heavens, the shadow's motion across the inner surface was a direct, one-to-one representation of the sun's actual path. There was no complex mathematical projection needed to flatten the sky onto a plane. The hyperbolas for the hours and the seasons formed themselves with an elegance and accuracy that a flat dial could never achieve. The entire daily and yearly cycle of the sun was captured within this stone hemisphere. The deepest part of the bowl, directly under the gnomon's tip, represented the zenith, the sun's highest point at noon. The rim of the bowl marked the horizon. A shadow that reached the rim indicated sunrise or sunset. This was more than a timepiece. It was a portable, tangible model of the cosmos, a universe in miniature that anyone could read by simply observing the silent, graceful sweep of a shadow across a curved stone sky. Yet for all its genius, the Roman sundial was not a purely Roman invention. Its soul was born under a different sky, in the academies and observatories of ancient Greece. The theoretical bedrock for this entire technology was laid by Greek thinkers who saw the universe not as a mystery, but as a system of geometry. Aristarchus of Samos, centuries before the Common Era, proposed a heliocentric model and used geometric principles to estimate the distances to the sun and moon. His work and that of others established the fundamental idea that the heavens could be measured and understood, but the true architect of the sundial's celestial map was Hipparchus of Nicaea, a man often called the greatest astronomer of antiquity. Working in the 2nd century before Christ, Hipparchus meticulously cataloged the stars and, most importantly for our story, developed the mathematics of spherical trigonometry. He understood that the sun's apparent path was not a simple arc, but a complex motion on the curved surface of an imaginary celestial sphere. It was Hipparchus who provided the theoretical tools to project the lines of this sphere onto a flat or curved surface, creating the precise hyperbolas and arcs that would define the sundial's face. The Romans, however, were not theoretical astronomers. They were the world's most practical engineers and administrators. They saw the powerful potential in this Greek knowledge and did what they did best. They took a brilliant, abstract system and transformed it into a robust, scalable, and tangible technology. They adapted the complex geometries of Hipparchus into standardized designs that could be reproduced by legions of surveyors and stone carvers from the deserts of Syria to the mists of Britain. The Greeks gave them the cosmic blueprint, and the Romans built the empire's clock. This was not mere copying. It was a translation of pure theory into the very stone and bronze that governed daily life for millions, turning philosophical insight into the silent, steady rhythm of Roman order. We have a direct line into the mind of a Roman engineer, thanks to the writings of Marcus Vitruvius Pollio. In his 10-volume work, De Architectura, Vitruvius did not just describe buildings. He dedicated an entire book to timekeeping, providing a manual for constructing the very devices that ordered the empire. He lists no fewer than 13 different types of sundials, from the simple hemicyclium or bowl dial to more complex designs like the conical and spherical types. He writes of their construction with a methodical clarity, explaining how the geometer must first understand the principles of the celestial sphere before a single line is carved. One specific passage instructs the builder to find the equinoctial line, that crucial curve for the spring and autumn days. He describes taking the 16th part of the circumference of the dial's face to determine the proper height for the gnomon, a precise mathematical ratio that transforms a block of stone into a functional clock. This was not a book of abstract theory, it was a practical guide, a set of engineering standards meant to be used in the field. Vitruvius provides the very blueprint for the hyperbolas, explaining how the sun's path at the winter and summer solstices dictates the outermost curves. His writing gives us the Roman technical mindset in its purest form. Knowledge was not to be hoarded by philosophers, it was to be systematized, written down, and disseminated so that a military engineer in a distant province could construct a perfectly accurate sundial using nothing but local materials, a set of geometric rules, and this book. This systematic approach to sharing engineering knowledge was a cornerstone of Roman power. It meant that the same precise time, the same Roman hour, could be marked from one end of the empire to the other, creating a unified temporal order built on a foundation of shared, practical wisdom. The silent sweep of that shadow did more than mark the hours. It orchestrated the rhythm of an empire. In the Roman Forum, the day did not begin with a bell or a whistle, but with the first clear shadow of the sun falling across the morning line on the public sundial. This was the official start of business, the moment the bankers could set up their tables and the merchants could begin their haggling. The courts, too, waited for the sun's signal. A legal case might be scheduled for the 5th hour, and all parties knew that judgment was measured by that stone clock, not by a magistrate's whim. This shared public time prevented disputes and created a framework for fairness. As the shadow advanced, it signaled the opening of the baths, the time for political assemblies, and the closing of the markets. In a city of over 1 million people, this synchronization was not a convenience. It was a necessity for survival. Without it, the chaotic flow of commerce, law, and social life would have descended into utter confusion. The empire itself ran on this solar pulse. An edict issued in Rome would specify its time of proclamation by the sundial's hour, creating a legal timestamp that could be referenced across the provinces. When a governor in distant Spain reported an event, he would note the local sundial's reading, allowing administrators in the capital to understand the sequence of events across thousands of miles. This shared temporal language, enforced by stone and shadow, bound the disparate parts of the empire together into a single manageable entity. The sundial was the steady heartbeat of Roman civilization, a quiet, constant reminder that order, from the highest law to the most mundane daily routine, flowed from the predictable motion of the heavens. But a sundial's authority vanished with the sun. When clouds blanketed the sky or night fell, the silent guardian went blind, and the steady rhythm of Roman time risked dissolving into guesswork. So what did a merchant do when a sudden storm rolled in just as his contract was due at the 5th hour? The Romans had a brilliant solution, a technology that worked in perfect harmony with the sundial. They turned to water. The clepsydra or water clock was the sundial's indispensable partner. This device measured time not by the sun's arc, but by the steady drip of water from a decorated vessel into a receiving tank. It did not care about clouds or darkness. A clepsydra could mark the passage of an hour in a sealed room, deep within a basilica, or in the dead of night. Yet this constancy presented its own problem. A water clock's accuracy depended entirely on a constant flow rate, but water pressure changes as the reservoir empties, making the drip slightly faster when the vessel is full and slower as it nears empty. How could they ensure a water clock kept the same time as the city's official sundial? The answer was a continuous cycle of calibration. On every clear, sunny day, officials would use the sundial's shadow as the ultimate reference. They would note the exact moment the shadow touched a new hour line on the marble dial and immediately check the water level in the clepsydra. If the water level was too high or too low compared to the hour mark inside its tank, they would adjust the flow rate or refill the vessel, synchronizing the man-made stream with the celestial motion. The sundial was the master clock, the absolute standard, while the water clock was the reliable, all-weather servant. In this elegant partnership, the empire ensured that the official Roman hour marched on, whether under a blazing sun, a starry sky, or the gloom of a winter storm. Walking through the ruins of Pompeii today, you can still find the silent stone witnesses that mark the city's final hours. In the House of the Faun, a marble hemispherical sundial sits in the garden, its bowl-like face permanently fixed toward the sky it last saw nearly 2,000 years ago. The bronze gnomon is long gone, looted by treasure hunters or melted by time, but the carved lines within the bowl remain sharply defined. Archaeologists who have measured these curves find them to be hyperbolas of stunning precision, accurately marking the seasonal hours for the latitude of Pompeii. This was not a decorative ornament, it was a working timepiece, and the crispness of its inscriptions suggests it was still in daily use when the ash fell. Another sundial, recovered from the Temple of Apollo in the same city, bears a faint but telling inscription along its base. It names the two local magistrates who paid for its installation. This was public infrastructure, a point of civic pride funded by elected officials to serve the community, its accuracy a reflection of their good governance. Travel north to the ancient port of Aquileia and you encounter a different story carved in stone. A massive horizontal plate sundial was unearthed there, its broad marble surface designed for a public square. Modern laser scanning of its surface reveals something fascinating. The primary hour lines are deeply and expertly cut, but there are also faint, secondary scratches nearby. These appear to be correction marks, slight adjustments made by a later hand attempting to recalibrate the dial after its base had settled or shifted. This sundial was not abandoned after its initial installation. It was cared for, watched over by someone who noticed its growing inaccuracy and tried, with less sophisticated tools, to bring its shadow back into alignment with the official Roman hour. This is the archaeology of maintenance, physical proof that these devices required continuous oversight to remain the reliable guardians of order. From the sands of Egypt to the damp frontiers of northern Britain, the empire's sundials speak of a standardized system adapted to local conditions. A sundial found in Roman Egypt has a gnomon angle set for a much lower latitude than Rome's, perfectly calibrated for the sun of Alexandria, yet its design, a classic hemispherium, is purely Roman, showing how the blueprint from Vitruvius traveled across the world. In the cold north at a fort in Hadrian's Wall, a much simpler, cruder sundial was discovered. Its lines are roughly carved into a slab of local stone, and its geometry is less refined. This was a soldier's clock, built for function over beauty, but its mere existence on that windswept frontier is a powerful statement. Even at the edge of the known world, the Roman legionary felt the need to impose his own temporal order, to divide his watch by the same sun that governed the Forum thousands of miles away. The stones themselves bear the scars of their long service. On many surviving dials, you can see a distinct wear pattern. The marble is slightly more polished, more smooth along the curves for the morning and afternoon hours, from the countless times a finger traced the shadow's edge to check the time for a meeting or the closing of the market. The noon line, however, often remains comparatively sharp. The sun's shadow moves fastest at midday, spending less time on that specific mark, so it was touched less frequently by human hands. This subtle erosion is a direct imprint of daily life, a map of ancient urgency preserved not in ink, but in the slow, gentle wearing away of stone by generations of Romans who lived their lives by the silent sweep of a shadow. The true accuracy of these ancient clocks remained a mystery for centuries, locked within the weathered marble. Modern technology has finally given us the key. Historians and archaeologists now use high-resolution 3D scanning to create perfect digital models of surviving sundials. These laser scans capture every chip, every worn curve, and every faint scratch with sub-millimetric precision, creating a ghostly perfect replica of the stone without ever touching it. This digital twin is then imported into sophisticated astronomical software, the same kind used to plan satellite trajectories. The software knows the exact position of the sun in the sky for any date in history at any location on Earth. Researchers can input the precise latitude of the archaeological site, set a virtual date, say the IDs of March in the year 100, and watch as the program calculates exactly where the shadow from the virtual gnomon should fall. They then compare this perfect computed shadow path with the actual physical lines carved into the scan stone. The results are astonishing. Many of the best preserved sundials, like one found in the ruins of a villa near Pompeii, demonstrate an accuracy within just 2 to 3 minutes of true solar time. This level of precision, achieved with simple bronze tools and geometric principles, is a testament to the extraordinary skill of Roman surveyors and stone carvers. They were not just artisans, they were applied astronomers, yet the digital analysis also reveals fascinating failures. A sundial unearthed at a remote military outpost in Britain shows a consistent error of nearly 15 minutes. The scan revealed that the hyperbola lines for the afternoon hours were subtly misaligned. This was not the result of the base settling over time. The error was carved into the stone from the very beginning. The most likely explanation is that the legionary engineer tasked with its construction, far from the advanced schools of Rome, was working from an imperfect copy of Vitruvius's plans or lacked the full training to execute the complex geometry. His sundial still told time, but it told the time of a slightly different, slightly skewed reality. These imperfections are just as valuable as the perfect examples. They paint a more human picture of the Roman world, showing how technical knowledge could be diluted at the edges of the empire, creating a quiet stone-carved testament to the gap between the ideal of Roman order and its practical, sometimes flawed, application on the ground. So how close could a master craftsman, using all the knowledge of Rome, actually get to true solar time? Under perfect conditions, with a flawless gnomon on a cloudless day in a still forum, the very best sundials likely achieved an accuracy within 5 to 10 minutes. This was the absolute ceiling of their ancient art. Their theoretical understanding, thanks to Greek astronomers like Hipparchus, was remarkably sound. The mathematics to project the sun's path was more than precise enough. The true limits were not in the geometry, but in the physical world. The first and most unavoidable challenge was atmospheric refraction. We rarely think about the air itself bending light, but the Earth's atmosphere acts like a subtle lens. When the sun is near the horizon at sunrise or sunset, its light is refracted or bent over the horizon. This means you see the sun just before it has actually risen, and you continue to see it just after it has truly set. For a sundial, this means the sun's apparent position is always slightly higher in the sky than its true geometric position. This atmospheric lensing shifts the shadow on the dial by a tiny but consistent amount, introducing an error of several minutes that the Romans could not possibly have corrected for, as the concept of light refraction was not yet understood. Then there were the tools of the trade. The dioptra, their advanced surveying instrument, was a marvel of its age, but it was not a modern theodolite. Sighting the North Star to set the gnomon's angle or tracing the sun's meridian to orient the dial involved human judgment. The slightest squint, a tiny misalignment of the sighting pins, or a minute wobble in the instrument stand could translate into an error of a minute or two on the dial face. Even the sharpest bronze point on the gnomon still cast a shadow with a soft, slightly blurred edge. Reading the exact moment that fuzzy edge crossed a carved line in the marble was an exercise in estimation. Was it exactly on the line or just a hair's breadth before it? Two people might disagree, and that disagreement represented a minute of time. Yet this seemingly imperfect precision was more than enough. Roman society did not run on the second or even the exact minute. A public decree might be issued for the 5th hour, a court case scheduled for the 7th. A variance of 5 minutes was insignificant in the grand rhythm of the civic day. The sundial's purpose was not atomic accuracy, but reliable order. It synchronized a city of thousands well enough to prevent chaos, to open the markets at the appointed time, and to close the courts when the shadow grew long. In that vital task, the silent stone guardian did not just succeed, it mastered time itself. That silent stone guardian, accurate to within minutes, measured a day defined by the sun. Our world now ticks to a different rhythm, governed by clocks that lose less than a second in 10 million years. The atomic clock, measuring the vibration of cesium atoms, represents a level of precision the Romans could not even conceptualize. Yet this staggering gap is not a measure of superiority, but a profound difference in purpose. The Roman sundial was an extension of the natural world, its time inextricably linked to the solar day. Noon was not a number on a dial, it was the moment the sun reached its zenith, a daily celestial event witnessed by everyone in the forum. Their hour was a flexible unit, 1/12 of the daylight, meaning a summer hour was longer than a winter hour. This was a time tied to human activity, to the available light for work and travel. Our modern second, by contrast, is an abstract, unchangeable unit, divorced from the sun's journey. We have sliced time into infinitesimal, perfectly identical fragments to synchronize global finance, power grids, and satellite navigation. A sundial could never guide a GPS signal or timestamp a digital transaction. But our atomic clocks are utterly blind to the sun's position in the sky. They know nothing of sunrise, midday, or the long shadows of evening. The Roman system created a shared, local rhythm for a community living in harmony with the sky. Our system creates a unified, global grid for a world interconnected by technology. One is not better than the other. They are perfect solutions to entirely different problems. The sundial answered the question, where are we in the daily cycle of the sun? Our clocks answer the question, what is the universally agreed upon instant, everywhere on Earth? The sundial's genius was in providing a time that felt true, a rhythm woven into the very fabric of daily life, while our clocks provide a time that is mathematically perfect, a pure abstraction that holds our digital world together. That steady pulse of public time did not fade with the Roman Empire. The idea of a shared hour, marked for all to see, was simply too powerful to vanish. In the quiet monasteries of the early Middle Ages, the sundial's legacy found a new home. Monks needed to observe their prayers at 7 specific times each day, a routine called the canonical hours. Their lives were governed by a divine schedule, and the sundial, often mounted on a sunny south wall of the cloister, provided the celestial rhythm for their devotion. But as towns grew again in the 11th and 12th centuries, that need for public order returned with a familiar Roman logic. The bustling merchant in a medieval market town faced the same problem as the Roman merchant 1,000 years earlier. He needed to know when the market opened, when contracts were due, and when the city gates would close. The solution was the clock tower, and its soul was a direct descendant of the sundial. The very first mechanical clocks were not built to show minutes, but to strike a bell on the hour, audibly marking the passage of time for an entire community, just as the moving shadow had done visually. The clock face itself, when it appeared, was a direct echo of the sundial's geometry. Its circular design and the radial lines marking the hours are a clear mechanical inheritance from the curved stone dials of the Roman Forum. The clock tower took the sundial's civic function and amplified it, using gears and weights to ensure the hour could be heard across the entire town, even on the cloudiest of days. This was not a replacement of an old technology, but an evolution. The medieval town square with its central clock tower is the direct architectural and social heir of the Roman Forum with its public sundial. Both structures placed a master clock, whether of stone or iron, at the very heart of public life, creating a shared temporal heartbeat that synchronized the complex dance of a community. The Romans had established the principle that time was a public utility, and that principle proved so enduring that it shaped the skylines of Europe for centuries to come. These stone clocks often spoke in poetry. Carved beside the intricate web of hyperbolas, you might find a short, elegant phrase in Latin, a philosophical whisper from the past. One of the most famous inscriptions reads, Horas non numo nisi serenas. I count only the sunny hours. On its surface, this is a charming admission of the sundial's limitation. It is useless on a cloudy day, but the meaning runs much deeper. This was not a complaint about bad weather. It was a profound statement about choice and perspective. It suggests a conscious decision to value only the good moments, the bright and productive hours, and to disregard the periods of shadow and difficulty. This transforms the sundial from a mere measuring device into a moral compass. urging its reader to focus on the positive and let the rest fade away. Other dials carried more somber warnings. Some were inscribed with the words perunt et imputanter, they perish and are reckoned to us. Every hour measured by the moving shadow was an hour of your life gone, never to return. The sundial became a memento mori, a stark reminder of mortality. As you watched the shadow creep from one line to the next, you were watching the irretrievable passage of your own time on Earth. This was not meant to be morbid, but to inspire purpose. It was a call to action, a reminder that each sunny hour was a precious resource to be used wisely, for time lost was a debt that could never be repaid. Another common phrase was sic transit vita, thus passes life. This simple declaration turns the daily journey of the sun's shadow into a metaphor for the human journey from birth to death. The shadow begins long and faint at dawn, grows sharp and short at the peak of life at noon, and then lengthens and softens again into the twilight. The Romans saw their own lives reflected in this daily cycle. These inscriptions reveal a culture that viewed time not as an abstract number, but as a tangible, fleeting force intertwined with nature and fate. Their relationship with time was deeply personal and philosophical. The sundial was not just a public utility for scheduling meetings. It was a personal counselor, a stone-carved philosopher that prompted reflection on how one chose to live within the finite, solar-powered hours allotted by the gods. It asked its viewers every single day, what will you do with the bright hours you are given, and how will you face the inevitable shadows? This ambitious project began not in a workshop, but in a quarry where a massive block of marble was selected for its fine grain and stability. A team of modern historians, a stone carver, and an astronomer decided to replicate the entire process, from raw stone to functioning timepiece, using only the tools Vitruvius would have recognized. Their first challenge was sheer physical labor. Shaping the heavy block into a smooth, hollowed-out hemisphere required days of work with iron chisels and wooden mallets, a process that left the marble dust covered and the carvers exhausted. Every strike had to be controlled. A single misplaced blow could fracture the stone, wasting weeks of effort and a small fortune in material. Next came the astronomical calculations. Using a replica dioptra, the team spent weeks under the open sky, sighting the North Star to determine the exact gnomon angle for their location. They traced the sun's shadow for days to pinpoint the local meridian line with painstaking care, a process where a misjudgment of a single degree would render the final clock useless. The most delicate task was transferring the complex web of hyperbolas onto the curved stone surface. They created a bronze template based on Hipparchus's spherical geometry, but the act of etching these perfect curves into the unyielding marble was a test of both skill and patience. The stone carver, guided by the astronomer's instructions, had to follow the template with absolute precision, his hand and tool becoming one to translate abstract lines into permanent physical grooves. The final moment of truth arrived on a clear, sunny day. The finished gnomon, a sharp bronze blade cast in a local foundry using ancient methods, was mounted into the center of the dial. As the sun climbed, the team watched, holding their breath. The shadow crept across the marble face, and they began comparing its position to a modern digital chronometer. The initial results were a humbling lesson. For the first few hours, the sundial was remarkably accurate, within 5 minutes of true solar time. But as the day warmed, the bronze gnomon expanded ever so slightly in the heat, just as the ancient text suggested it might. By midday, the error had grown to nearly 10 minutes. This was not a failure, it was a revelation. The experiment proved that the Roman design was theoretically flawless, but it also highlighted the ingenious pragmatism of their craftsmanship. The builders had to contend with the very real physical limitations of their materials. The modern team had successfully built a clock that told Roman time, complete with all its inherent human-scale imperfections. This living reconstruction taught them more than any text ever could. It revealed that Roman accuracy was not just about perfect geometry, but about a deep, practical understanding of the dialogue between the ideal cosmos and the stubborn reality of metal and stone. The lingering shadow of these ancient clocks is often obscured by modern myths. We tend to imagine Roman sundials as glorified sticks in the ground, charmingly primitive and hopelessly vague. The truth is a powerful correction to this assumption. These were not crude approximations. The public sundial in a major forum was a precision instrument. its accuracy honed by generations of astronomical observation and engineering skill. The idea that a Roman citizen could only tell the time to within half an hour is a complete misunderstanding of the evidence. As we have seen, the best examples were accurate to within minutes, a feat that required deep knowledge, not guesswork. Another persistent myth suggests the Romans were blissfully unaware of the sun's inconsistencies, like the equation of time. They absolutely knew the sun was an imperfect timekeeper. Their most advanced dials incorporated clever corrections for this very drift, sometimes through adjustable components or secondary markings that shifted the readable time to align with a more standardized civic hour. They did not have our atomic standard, but they were brilliant pragmatists who observed the heavens with relentless attention. They recognized the problem and engineered stone and bronze solutions to tame it. The final misconception is perhaps the most revealing. We often think of these devices in isolation as solitary monuments to a single moment. In reality, they existed within a network of timekeeping. A sundial was the master clock, constantly used to calibrate its all-weather partner, the water clock. This continuous cross-checking proves they were not just accepting of their primary clock's limitations. They were actively managing them, creating a resilient system that kept the empire's rhythm steady through sunshine and storm. These stone sentinels were not simple. They were the product of a sophisticated civilization that looked at the chaotic sky and saw instead an opportunity to impose a magnificent and enduring order. The sundial's silent shadow was more than a timekeeper. It was a prayer. For the Romans, the sun was not merely a fiery ball of gas. It was Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun, a divine force whose daily victory over darkness was a cosmic drama they could measure with stone and bronze. Tracking its precise path was an act of piety, a way to participate in the divine order of the universe. Each day, as the shadows swept across the hyperbolas, it reaffirmed that the cosmos operated according to a rational, predictable plan. This was not random chaos. It was a system, a celestial republic with its own laws, and the sundial was humanity's front row seat. This philosophical framework gave Rome's timekeeping a profound purpose. By meticulously carving the sun's journey into marble, Roman engineers were not just building a clock, they were building a monument to the idea of a divinely ordained universe, one where Rome itself was the central, organizing power on earth. The emperor was often symbolically linked to Sol Invictus, the bringer of light and order to the human world, just as the sun brought light and order to the heavens. A public sundial, therefore, was a powerful piece of political and religious propaganda. Its unwavering accuracy demonstrated that Roman rule was as natural, as inevitable, and as perfectly aligned as the motion of the sun itself. To live by the sundial's rhythm was to accept your place within this grand cosmic hierarchy. It whispered that the same intelligence that governed the paths of the planets also governed the laws of the forum and the march of the legions. The stone was not just telling you the hour, it was telling you that everything from the highest god to the lowest citizen had a proper place and a proper time, all under the watchful, unconquered eye of the sun. That carved marble block was far more than a simple shadow caster. It was the culmination of a journey from a basic geometric principle to a monument of engineering genius. The accuracy of a Roman sundial stands as a timeless testament to the power of applied mathematics, the patience of meticulous craftsmanship, and the wisdom born from deep, sustained observation of the natural world. It was a device where abstract astronomical theory was translated into the solid reality of stone and bronze, a public utility that synchronized an entire civilization with the rhythm of the heavens. When you stand before one of these ancient clocks today, you are not just looking at a historical artifact, you are connecting with the daily pulse of Roman life, with the footsteps of the merchant hurrying to the forum at the third hour, the senator preparing for a speech at noon, and the philosopher pondering the inscription that counted only the sunny hours. You are witnessing a profound understanding of the cosmos, an understanding carved not in fleeting words, but in the enduring language of geometry and light. So the next time your own shadow stretches long before you, take a moment, look for a sundial in a garden or a public square and see it with new eyes. See the invisible hyperbolas, the precisely angled gnomon, and the silent, sweeping shadow that once governed an empire, a quiet masterpiece of human ingenuity that still captures a moment in time.